Would you welcome, please, Thomas Chapin with Mario Pavone on bass and Michael Sarin on drums. Thomas Chapin.
Hello, I'm Abby London Crawford. Welcome to an episode of Legacies, a video magazine series focusing on people who maintain or preserve the legacy of creative artists. Those I will host have some connection to me. I'll share the respect and love I have for them and the profound impact they have had on those around them. For this episode, I was to interview my friend, Terri Castillo Chapin, a former book editor, writer, and filmmaker. Terri was the widow of the remarkable Thomas Chapin, composer, saxophonist, flutist, and collagist, who passed away far too soon at age 40 in 1998. With guidance from those who dearly cared for Thomas, Terri collected and archived his musical works. Most of his music and papers are now found in the Rubenstein collection at Duke University, where past fans and new fans alike can continue to discover him. In 2019, as Terri was updating Thomas's website, Canadian friends told her about the discovery of written but as yet unheard compositions of his last tunes: Fallen Angel, Oracles of the Night, and Lens. Each of these had been composed for a large group of woodwinds. Terri never allowed us to forget Thomas. One of many public tributes given to honor his artistry was an orchestral production at St. Peter's in Manhattan, presented on his birthday in 2008. In the summer of 2020, after 35 years of living in New York City, Terri was leaving the Jackson Heights Queens apartment she had shared with Thomas. She was moving home to Hawaii to be near her family. I wanted to find out more about his legacy and their life together in New York City. My visit with Terri was going to allow the audience to experience the place where Thomas had lived, worked, and created his music. Terri was so busy getting ready for her move, I decided to prepare written questions for a future Zoom interview. Unfortunately, she found she had to cancel, apologizing for not having the energy or the time, and she rescheduled it in Hawaii. On a very sad note, Terri succumbed to a growing cancer in December 2020. She was always concerned about friends and family first and really focused on her own ailments. Even during the preparations for this interview, Terri wanted her part played down and insisted Thomas be front and center. I had to convince her that the true focus was her very important efforts to secure Thomas's future legacy. To say they both will be dearly missed is truly an understatement. Terri's ongoing concern and support for her friends was exemplary. She always came to and spread the word about my musical concert productions, as well as lending caring underpinnings to all of her friendships. Terri was very close to the great avant-garde downtown scene poets Steve Dalachinsky and Yuko Otomo. Both had loved Thomas and his music. Steve had written poems to him. One of the last times I saw Terri was when we went together to a huge memorial for Steve. As widows, both Terri and I really wanted to bring whatever comfort we could to Yuko. In a letter to me, Terri wrote, "She, like me, understands and desires to dedicate herself to Steve's legacy, like me for Thomas. She is loved by so many. How fortunate to have that kind of support and foundation of friends and community."
Thomas Chapin, reed player, flutist, composer, visual artist, collagist, poet, Mensch, everyman, Renaissance man, musician, warm heart, true friend whom I love and miss and think of each day. The seeker, innovator, faithful, forgiving, formidable soul. The ears of music when the husks are stripped away. The voice that resonates when the duet is in disjunctive harmony. Brash, sweet kernels. I speak to you as you speak to me. This sound that we hear that is one in us all, and all the silence and the taste and touch and scent and sight that is in all of us in this very big small world. If I could play music, if I could say music, would this way, that way, the way the fingers dance, the way the singer takes the chance, and I should if I could, and I could if I would play music and say music and be music and see music, and that music would be you.
I had the joy of serving as an associate producer on the 2016 award-winning documentary Nightbird Song, The Incandescent Life of Thomas Chapin. This beautiful film was directed by Terri's sister, Stephanie J. Castillo. In that film, Terri described first hearing Thomas play in 1988 in Grand Central Station. She was drawn to the mesmerizing music that had formed a large crowd around a performer.
As soon as there was a break, I went over to him and said, I'm making films and I'm looking for music. Do you have any music?
That film was School Crossing from 1989. Later, Terri made two delightful short films about Thomas, Music Man and Dancing Chicken Man. Both films revealed the joyful musical artist and the very caring, sensitive person that he was. Her sister Stephanie also explored that in Jazzman in 1993 for Hawaiian television, and later more extensively in Nightbird Song. Terri's films were made while she was in graduate school at the New School. They can be seen on YouTube, as well as on the terrific website she set up, thomaschapin.com. When asked what impressed and inspired her about Thomas from the very beginning of their relationship, Terri replied, his devotion to making his own music and fulfilling his mission, to compose and create his music, his commitment to bring his voice forth through the music and his playing. He was very animated, using his whole body and movement as part of the music. It was natural and made him unique. No one could play and move like he did because it just was him. He was just a wonderful and loving guy, and we fit like two peas in a pod, as they say. Terri said, he was determined to be a musician to the very end. He played one last concert in Connecticut while still very sick.
It's okay because of Sunday, which was the night he played. He had said, I just want to play one last time. That was his wish. I just want to play one last time. I was like, wow, okay, he's like at this place where he's at peace. What more beautiful place could it be if he were to leave?
Saxophonist, arranger, and big band leader Paul Jeffrey was Thomas's teacher and mentor at both the Hart School of Music in Connecticut and later at Rutgers Livingston. Thomas was blessed that Paul Jeffrey and Jackie McLean both recognized his brilliance early on when he was at Hart. There, Thomas was also inspired by Rahsaan Roland Kirk and James Spaulding. Later, Jeffrey would go on to teach at Duke, and eventually he arranged for Thomas's music, papers, and memorabilia to be stored in their special music collection. While Thomas and Paul Jeffrey was still at Rutgers Livingston, Jeffrey recommended Thomas to Lionel Hampton. Thomas's exceptional abilities were recognized, and he soon became the Hampton Big Band's youngest musical director. In the 1970s, Thomas was one of the first artists at Michael Dorf's knitting factory and was sent on tours across the U.S. and Europe. He was also the first artist on their label when Knitting Factory Records formed. Saul Rubin was a close friend and frequent collaborator of Thomas Chapin. An accomplished guitarist, Saul Rubin's career has taken him around the world. Rubin has shared stage and studio with a wide diversity of artists. Sonny Rollins said, "Saul is a consummate musician. He is everything I could ask for in a bandmate."
Thomas Chapin was one of the few musical geniuses I knew in my lifetime, a major influence on me. During the 80s, I was a member of his group, Spirits Rebellious. His compositions were heavily influenced by Brazilian music, funk, and jazz. Percussive music with amazing melodies and harmony. Charismatic, with high energy, incredibly talented, emotional, a brilliant musician. Thomas was right on the cusp of having a bigger career in the jazz business when he died too soon. His music was multidimensional, hard to put in a box for sale. Thomas was uncompromising. He loved jazz, tango, salsa, avant-garde, rock, and was fascinated by life and so many things. His greatest legacy is his music, but also the people that knew him really got to experience something great, transcendental. Terri was his soulmate, a beautiful person, spent the rest of her life promoting his legacy. Her dedication to promoting and sharing his music with the world was really inspiring. Thomas endures in the people that knew him and those that play his music. I continue to play his music on a regular basis.
Bruce Lee Galanter is a self-described lifelong music fan, a music addict. From the mid-60s, he collected records and music magazines, wrote for them from the 70s until 1990. Bruce started his own record store in 1991 called Downtown Music Gallery. Now celebrating 30 years, it's the last remaining record store in New York City that has been around that long. Bruce still has the passion for listening to and promoting creative music. His weekly reviews in the DMG newsletter now reach 8,000 subscribers.
Late 70s especially, I was going to as many jazz gigs as possible. One of my oldest friends took me to a series of concerts at Rutgers Livingston Jazz School. Opening for each concert were different student ensembles. They were all good. But all of a sudden, one guy gets up and blows an alto solo and blows everybody in the audience away. Everyone looks around and goes, "Who is that?" This turned out to be Thomas Chapin, but I didn't know his name yet. But we knew that he was special. In the mid-'80s, John introduced me to a new band he had organized with a guitarist named Bob Musso. The quintet was called Machine Gun, and they were all members of Rutgers Livingston jazz groups. When John described their saxes to me, I knew exactly who he was talking about. That was Thomas Chapin. And Thomas Chapin, whose nickname at that point was Rage, was the center of the storm, blowing harder sax than anyone else I had heard. Bob Musso's label, Newarks, released an early Thomas Chapin recording called Radius. Thomas asked me to write the liner notes, which I was very proud to do. It's the first time somebody asked me to do that. And later, Thomas organized a trio with Mario Pavone and Steve Johns. It is rare for someone who has mastered different types of jazz to also do a variety of other projects, each one something special. But this was Thomas Chapin, a true Renaissance man of many talents. I met Terri Castillo at several of Thomas's gigs, and we became friends as well. She was always completely supportive of whatever Thomas did, and I was glad to be with both of them. They were both lovely people. After Thomas passed away in 1998, Terri asked if I would help her do some Thomas Chapin tribute gigs. I said, of course. So we did 2 of them, about a decade apart, and I was the MC at both of them. Terri gave me a large picture of Thomas at the second gig that I MC'd, which I still proudly display in the store. Thomas is the patron saint of Downtown Music Gallery. Come in and you'll see his picture on the wall.
Bassist, composer, arranger extraordinaire, Mario Pavone was a part of Chapin's trio from the very beginning in 1980. He stayed for 18 years until Thomas's passing. Between a very busy performing and touring schedule, the trio recorded 9 albums. Terri Chapin adored Mario and was an ardent fan. Distinguishing himself in avant-garde ensembles in the mid-60s, Mario recorded his first album as a leader in 1979. Following the trio, this versatile musician-composer led numerous groups, recording with a wide range of the most dynamic musical artists, resulting in a career total of nearly 50 albums. The New Yorker has said, Mario Pavone works his strings with the force and persistence of a sculptor, chipping away at granite. Terri also helped put together CD releases like Ride, the trio live in Europe at the North Sea Jazz Fest in Holland in 2006, and a 3 CD collection, Never Let Me Go. That collection shows the range and styles of music Thomas played, from traditional standards to the more improvisational and experimental music. Terri said, his music deserved to be preserved, both his avant-garde trio and his straight-ahead quartet-quintet music. And generations to come deserve to discover him and hear him. And they do. They have. There's still no one like him. He was one of the most creative and innovative players of his generation, which is what the critics said, including the New York Times, who reviewed him numerous times and wrote an obituary on him when he passed. When Thomas died, Terri spent some time healing on a lake houseboat in Kashmir. The family that befriended her there remained warm correspondents for years afterwards. On her return, Terri continued planning more compilations of Thomas's musical legacy, saying, "There is a trio live in Europe group of CDs I am working on getting out. Mike Sarin, the trio's drummer, has commented on these sessions." Michael Sarin, drummer, composer, and educator, has played with a broad spectrum of jazz and improvised music's innovators. He was the trio's drummer from 1991. Sarin recently remarked, "Thomas and Terri are very much with me. I'm playing Thomas's tunes with others, and Thomas is always with us when we play together." Terri created a website and the nonprofit Akasha Inc. in 2005, which is dedicated to education through the preservation and advancement of the Thomas Chapin music legacy. Terri said, "It started small to have a place to put his music, history, stories from others. Sam Kaufman, Thomas's manager for a short time before his death, helped me, and other good musician friends, including the producer and writer Marty Kahn. The downtown designer, Dave Bias, who designed many of the Knitting Factory CDs, helped with the look and placement of items at the website. Terri's friend, Scott Friedlander, is today still advancing Thomas's legacy.
I was never honored with knowing Thomas Chapin, but I was always a fan of his playing and music. A mutual friend, Bruce Gallanter, held Thomas in the highest regard and introduced me to Terri Castillo Chapin at Cornelia Street Cafe during a Mario Pavone performance in 2004. Terri had tapes that needed transferring to more accessible digital files. Currently, I work in tandem with members of the Castillo and Chapin family to document everything and continue maintaining Thomas Chapin's legacy.
I asked Terri, what do you think others who hear Thomas's music now will remember about him? I know that many international artists have already made album tributes to him. Terri replied, many of them are young and they keep discovering Thomas as the critics said they would. Also, his unique style, energy, and spirit. He was a unique and creative player with a voice, power, and energy like no other. No one else like him, now or since. Enid Farber is a self-taught photographer who first documented the music world in Atlanta. Arriving in New York City in 1985, she has focused primarily on visually recording the evolving history of the jazz and world music scene for publications and record companies. In 1996, Jazz's magazine made Farber their main New York photographer. In 2003, Jazz's also spotlighted Enid's photographs of 12 artists, which included Thomas Chapin, in a large spread entitled Legends Who Have Passed Through My Lens. In summarizing her work, Farber has said, "The camera is my instrument. This way, I have also been allowed to participate vicariously. I too can play the music."
My Terri story must include her dearest Thomas, the two T's tangled in life and love and after forever now. My first interaction was as a photographer who covers jazz primarily and was shooting one of Thomas's performances at the Knitting Factory in 1997. Besides the photos of Thomas, there were two photos of Thomas and Terri that will live on as some of my very favorites. One on stage at the microphone, the other backstage with Terri grabbing Thomas's head while it was slightly tipped back, a towel around his neck and his face beaming with the biggest, happiest smile possibly ever, joy overflowing and emanating from his soul while his beloved woman embraced him. I sent Thomas an 8x10 hand-printed photo during the days I still had a dark room. I checked my answering machine at home, pre-cell phone days, and there was a long, loving message from Thomas, ecstatically thanking me for the photo. It was not too long after that occasion that I found out Thomas was sick. It was from that point on that I bonded with Terri, his widow, who never let his legacy linger in the ether, who protected it with such care.
Terri ended most of her emails with this favorite haiku, one of many she wrote. My small world haiku. In the distant dawn, silver blue light streaks the sky. Blue sunrise surprise. Thomas once told Terri, when you die, the melody remains. It's the song of your life. All the very best to you, Terri and Thomas, and to both of your legacies.